This is a combination. Yeah, there we go. This is a combination of an informal presentation and a question and answer session. We're happy to have this opportunity to meet with you and to answer any questions you have. You're probably familiar with our format now, but this is a question and answer session that's a little different than a coffee session. We're keeping track of your questions behind the scenes and sorting them so we can answer them systematically. We'll do our best to answer all your questions live, so expect a verbal response. You will not see answers typed into the Q&A feature like they are in a coffee session. In case you have questions regarding the general ELPAC, the recording from the ELPAC Q&A has been uploaded in Moodle, and if we end up having some extra time, we'll try to answer those here as well. When writing a question, please be very specific about the context and any relevant details related to your question. Before submitting your question, ask yourself, would someone who's not attending this Q&A understand what you're asking? There's no note-taking guide. However, the recording of this session, these slides, and the questions and answers will be posted in the question and answer session section of the Summative Alternate ELPAC, LEA certification course in Moodle. They will also be posted on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. So today, before we get to your questions, we will touch on a few topics: the Moodle training decision tool, certification, testing materials, practice tests, the test delivery system or TDS, and we'll talk about some notes on the upcoming administration. So let's move on. In response to your feedback, we've created the Moodle training decision tool. Determining what to complete in Moodle can be challenging, and this quick and easy tool is intended to help you determine where you need to go and what you need to complete in Moodle for training and certification, whatever your role. The tool is intended for LEA coordinators and test examiners. It determines what you need to complete in Moodle for training and certification. It provides a personalized email with your training and certification information. And so now I'm going to switch over to Moodle and show you where it's located and how it works. Okay, when you select either the Summative Alternate ELPAC LEA certification course or the Alternate ELPAC Test Examiner certification course, from the login page, you'll find the Moodle Training Decision tool after the course title at the top of the course selection page. Select the Moodle Training Selection tool and enter your contact information. Select the box or boxes corresponding to your role or roles. Note that the role options say ELPAC and not alternate ELPAC. We're concerned with the role here and not the program. We'll select the test examiner role first. Then select the program. Be certain to select the alternate ELPAC because the results for alternate ELPAC are significantly different from the initial or summative ELPAC. And then hit submit. In this case, our result shows that the test examiner needs to take the alternate ELPAC test examiner certification course. This is the single course that the alternate ELPAC test examiners complete annually in November. Backing up, when we select the LEA ELPAC coordinator as our role, the results are different. Notice that the tool will remind you that an LEA coordinator needs to take the initial and the summative alternate ELPAC certification courses. For LEA coordinators, the summative alternate ELPAC LEA certification course is the primary annual training course for the alternate ELPAC. The initial training is merely a supplement to help you prepare for conditions specific to the initial assessment. This is a system that looks up the role or roles you select and tells you what a person in that role needs to complete It is not a system that knows who you are despite you providing your name and email. That information is collected merely to send you an email with the results. So it will tell you that an LEA coordinator needs to complete both the LEA certification courses, even if you have already completed one or both courses this year. The tool does not know what you personally have completed. It does know what a coordinator who also serves as a test examiner does not. It also knows that a coordinator who also serves as a test examiner does not need to complete both the LEA courses and the test examiner course. Notice when we go back and select both the coordinator and test examiner roles, which we have here, the result shows a person serving in both roles need only complete the coordinator courses. This may help prevent you from completing extra training that you don't need. So now we'll go back to the slide presentation. And on the certification, there we go. Let's talk a little bit more about certification. Certification requirements for the initial and summative alternate ELPAC are not changing. And they still apply only to LEAs who have eligible registered students for the alternate ELPAC. For the summative alternate ELPAC, LEA coordinators must complete their certification within 2 weeks of registering their first student. Emails are going out to those who have registered students this week, though because of the Thanksgiving week holiday, we're giving LEAs a little bit of extra time. For test examiners, certification is due before any assessment, whether initial or summative alternate ELPAC is administered. LEAs with limited eligible students may choose to enter into an MOU with an LEA that has already met the certification requirements. The MOU may be to either provide training or provide testing. Remember that MOUs do not roll over from year to year, and so they must be resubmitted annually. Testing materials for the summative alternate LPAC, including the Preparing for Administration, or PFA, Directions for Administration, or DFAs, Test Item Preview, or TIP booklets, and picture cards for both forms have been updated for this year's administration. Draft versions of all these materials are available at the end of your Moodle course page and separated by form. The DFAs and picture cards will remain in Moodle until they are uploaded to the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS, in mid-January. LEA LPAC coordinators have access to materials for both forms, whether or not the LEA is assigned to that form. So if you are an LEA LPAC coordinator and you've chosen to print updated materials for your test examiners, it's important that you double check that you've selected the correct form. We're excited to report that the alternate LPAC practice test has been refreshed. The updated version now matches the current functions and instructions provided in the operational assessment. We encourage you to use the practice test to get your students acclimated to the summative assessment, to try out response options, and to practice your administration skills before the day of testing. The test delivery system has been updated, and a few changes to the logon screens have been made. Previously, this first screen asked for the student's name, SSID, and the test session ID. Now, the first screen, titled Please Sign In, asks for the student's name and SSID, but without the session ID. The next screen is the Is This You screen. It confirms the student information by having the test examiner check for the student's name, SSID, grade, school, and state. This content has not changed. The third screen is the logon screen, where test examiners will enter the session ID when they select, or then they select the Join Session button to begin testing. Next comes the audio and video check. In LPAC, There are a series of these presented as a sequence, but however, alternate ELPAC is not affected by this change. All right, a few notes about the administration. In recent years, many LEAs have not assessed their eligible students. As a result, ETS will be following up on LEAs who have not completed testing beginning in mid-April of 2026. The test delivery system, or TDS, will be open through the final weekend of May this year. Though the final school day of the testing window falls on May 29th, the system will remain open until Sunday, May 31st. This is to provide LEAs additional time to enter their second scoring, and in the case of ELPAC, speaking results, into the DEI. We do not recommend testing students on the weekend, even if you can, since if an issue should arise, there's no way to rectify an issue. All right, let's move on to the question and answer portion of this webinar. Remember to please give clear context to your questions. If you accidentally submit a question before you include all the relevant information, please just submit that information in a supplemental question and let us know to which question you want us to connect the information.
All right, so I am Arlene Dendalk. I'll be your host for this question and answer session. And like John said at the beginning, in case you joined late and missed it, we are collecting your questions here in the background and sorting them out so folks can answer them. So you will not see answers to your questions in the Q&A feature. You will hear them out loud. And so I'm gonna jump around. The first question I'm gonna answer, I know it was answered in the chat, but I'm gonna say it again for anyone who joined after John said it. So links for this PowerPoint will be posted later. They're not available right now, and there is no resource guide for this Q&A. But in a couple weeks, this PowerPoint, the question and answers that we gather today, and the recording of this will be in Moodle for you to view. All right. So Jackie, can I hit you up first to answer a question about where to find the Moodle decision tool? And could you show that again?
That is exactly what I was going to do. So let me go back and start from the home. So once you log into Moodle and you are at the home page, you would scroll down and you would select, and you can select either the Summative Alternate LEA certification or the test examiner or even the initial. Once you select any of these, the Moodle training decision tool is right here towards the top. And it'll be in the same location, also under the test examiner training course. You would just select that, and then you would follow the steps and select. And that is where it's located.
Thanks, Jackie. And I'm going to answer one of those questions that's in there for you. There is no direct link to the Moodle decision making tool because you need to be in Moodle to find it. So it is located both in the alternate or the summative alternate ELPAC course and in the what we call the general summative ELPAC course. So you can find it in both places, and it's the same in each course. So whether you are trying to figure out how you need to train for the alternate ELPAC or the summative ELPAC, you can use that link in either one of those courses. All right, John, I'm going to give you a break and I'm going to pass this next question over. I believe someone from CDE will be answering this. So the question is, I'm new to my LEA role and need clarification, please. Last year, our district held numerous IEPs to determine if a student with an IEP should be exempt from taking up 2 of the 4 domains. Do those decisions roll over this year's summative assessment? And if not, what is the process that must be taken if a student should need to be exempt from a domain? So one of my CDE friends.
Sorry, Arlene. Trying
I
to.
was about to say, who's ever talking, it's on mute. Thanks, Tracy.
Am I doing the first one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So um, I am new to my LEA role and need clarification.
Yep.
Okay, so to determine if a student with an IEP should exempt from taking up to two of the four domains, do these decisions roll over for this year's summative assessment? If not, what is the process must be taken, and if the student would need to be exempt? You would still go through the exact same process this year as you did last year. Domain exemptions must be annually reviewed because students gain instruction from last year to this year, and where they may not have been able to access the domain, they now have gained knowledge and skills to do so. For example, a student may not have come in being having ASL literate, but over this last year, they are now ASL literate, so they may be able to access the listening domain. Same with a student who may have come in kindergarten, is not yet Braille literate, but over the past year, they have now been able to gain and understand enough Braille in order to respond. So this is why you must annually assess the students. And then once that is done, you can do it through an addendum in your IEP. And then you would go into TOMS and assign the student the specific domain that they are unable to access based on the available accommodation.
Thank you, Tracy. Tracy, can you get that next one for us too? Is there a deadline to
Sure.
register individual students for the summative alternate LPAC?
Students should be assigned to the alternates as soon as possible once that IEP is done and the student is determined to take alternate assessments. And just as a reminder, if a student is assigned the California alternate assessments for ELA, math, or science, they will automatically be assigned to the summative alternate LPAC. Again, we do know that sometimes IEPs are not done in at the beginning of the year, they may be done at a different time. If a student was identified at the end of the prior year, that assignment would then still be eligible through the time in which the next IEP is held. So you can enter that information in for the current year, depending on when the IEP was conducted.
That was my turn to not be able to get off mute. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
John, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you go over some of the accessibility resources we might consider when administering the alternate LPAC? But you have to get off mute too, John.
I was typing away here on something else, so it's a good thing I wasn't off mute. So some examples of the instructional supports that are permissible for CAAs or alternate LPAC are the test examiner signs the student in to signs to the students as the language of instruction, using like ASL. They can use an AAC device, like an AudioVox or a switch. They can respond with gestures, movements, vocalizations in place of speech. The students can use eye gaze as a way of indicating a response. There's also they can accept a test examiner can accept a change in muscle tone or a change in facial expression as an observed behavior. One of the things that we use a lot that are available in the alternate LPAC is the picture cards that can be used in a number of different ways. And we actually have a video that's optional in the both of the courses that describe ideas for how to make the test more individualized and more accessible by using picture cards in various different ways. And we do recommend if you're trying to find the best communication mode or the best response options for your student, that you go through some of the practice test items with them and kind of experiment with different ways for them to respond so that you can maximize their ability to share what they know.
Thanks, John. How about the next one? If an LEA has currently enrolled students designated to take the Summative alternate LPAC, is the LEA certification due 2 weeks prior to February 1st or earlier?
It's actually due 2 weeks after you register the students. We haven't been sending out emails about that yet, but we are sending them out this week. And usually we have that 2 week deadline, but we are giving a little extra time because of the Thanksgiving holiday. It kind of works out that if you have students that are on the long list, there's like 250 LEAs out there that have students registered and have not trained yet, that you're probably going to need to finish by about the 5th of December, and which is very close to the deadline that's for ELPAC, which is December 8th, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you a break, John. I'm going to turn it over to some of our friends from ETS. I'm not sure which one of you is going to answer this, but I'm going to throw out this question. If exemptions are entered into SACE, do they feed into TOMS via an upload from our LEA? Who wants to tackle that one?
Hey, Arlene, I can take that. This is Tyler
Thanks,
Shakwa.
Tyler.
No problem. So exemptions are in TOMS, they are a test assignment setting, not a test setting, or also called an accessibility resource. So the SACE to TOMS integration that you're talking about there is only transfers test settings or accessibility resources, and an exemption is not one of those. It's under test assignments, so we don't send those via that SACE integration.
Thanks. Do you want to catch the next one for us?
Yes.
Are there still efforts being
Ah,
made to connect? I don't know if they were,
yeah,
if it was SACE
Cyrus
or,
and
but
Tom's.
yeah,
I think Cyrus is a different student information system or SIS system. Yeah, and there are several different SIS vendors working on that if it's not already available. And again, that's just to send test settings from those information systems to Tom's. I'm not 100% sure about that one in particular, but you'll have to, for most of them, for info on that availability, you'll have to contact your SIS vendor directly.
fantastic. Thank you. Tracy, I want to throw it back to you. We have a question about second scoring. In regards to second scoring, how do we know if our LEA is required to do second scoring?
So LEA coordinators have their school sites selected for second scoring will receive an email notifying them of the requirement. But schools can also find their assignments using the search tool on our assignments page. And if you just look up form assignments on the CAASPP and ELPAC website, that's the easiest way. And then you just add in your school information and it will bring up for each specific assessment whether or not what form you are assigned. And again, all of that information is on the CAASPP and ELPAC.org website.
And I just threw the link to that page, Tracy, in the chat for everyone if they want it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. I was just going to ask for someone to do that. Tracy, how about the next one? If I have a newcomer student taking the initial alt in April, will the student need to take the summative alternate LPAC before May 31st?
The answer is yes. They're required to take the summative alternate LPAC by May 31st if they are identified as an English learner after taking the initial alternate LPAC anytime during the summative testing window. So whether it's in February or in April, If they are identified as an English learner, then they will need to take the summative alternate ELPAC.
Thank you, Tracy. And I'm going to give you one more because you have a long list. Last year, we received final scores for students who took the summative alternate LPAC, even though we did not enter second scoring data. Is this typical?
So the first score is considered the official score, so the actual test examiner, not the second scorer. It is sometimes we know that districts struggle to find second scorers, but if a district did not complete the majority of their second scoring requirements, they may be added to the following year's second scoring requirements. And so we work with our testing contractor to see who is been diligently trying to administer the second scoring and determine if we need to add any from the current year to the following year. So we do know that sometimes, how shall I say, the student needs to be done on a second day in order to complete the testing for alternate LPAC, and you may not be able to bring back that second score. We know that happens, but you would still enter the scores that you have completed for second scoring into the DEI, and then leave the other ones as mark as no response for those since the student completed testing without the second score.
Thank you, Tracy. John, we're coming back at you, and you might need Jackie's help for this one. Someone would like to see the TDS screens again. And does the new TDS screen reflect on the initial LPAC? So Jackie is pulling that up in our PowerPoint.
I see that. Yes. Thank you, Jackie. So here are the TDS screens again. And the question is, does the new TDS screen example that we have reflect on the initial LPAC? And so I can answer part of that, but what I wanted to do is just get ETS to jump in here and say, did this change for initial LPAC as well?
Yes, those login screens, that process is the same for any test, including interim assessments and even practice and training tests that has that new interface.
Thank you. So yes, it does look the same as initial LPAC. The screens that I provided are representative of alternate LPAC and not necessarily LPAC, but they are the same until you get to the audio screen. So this, of course, is the first screen, the sign-in screen. The big change is it no longer requires the session ID. It still requires the first name and session or SSID. If you go to the next screen, this didn't change. The second screen, it's just the verification screen, the is this you screen. Go to the next one. This is where the login session is entered. You see the session ID next to the key. That's where you enter the session ID, and that's where you would select join session to start the testing. And the next screen, this is the only place where it's different. In ELPAC, there's a number of sequential checks for different domains, different actually, Arlene, you could probably help me out with this, but there's reasons why you might have a sequence of checks in general ELPAC that you don't have in alternate ELPAC.
Yes, that is true.
And so if you the new screens are in the summative LPAC Q&A slideshow that we just posted in summative LPAC Moodle. So if you want to see those, you can see those are posted there.
Yes. John, can you take that next question about my district was selected for second screen?
I think I can, but the ETS team may want to keep me honest here. So the question was, my district was selected for second scoring. Does this need to be done for every student assigned this alternate LPAC, the summative alternate LPAC, regardless of grade? Now, I believe that the second scoring assignments page on the CAASPP LPAC website should show any grade specific or limitations of grades or grade spans for second scoring. And if it doesn't give you any limitations of grades, then you have to do each grade. Does that sound right, Tyler?
That
Yeah,
sounds
it
right to
depends.
me, John. This is
What's
Linda.
that?
Yes, that sounds right to me, John. This is Linda from ETS.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
depends on the number of students that you have enrolled in your district, on whether you are assigned all students or a specific grade level or grade level spans. So, but that information should be in the second scoring assignment page.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. John, I'm going to do one more and then I'll take you off the hot seat. For students to be able to use the picture cards, does the student's IEP have to have the accommodation alternate response options?
Yes, the IEP does need to allow for alternate response options in order for them to use picture cards.
Okay, fantastic. Jackie, I'm coming your way for a minute. And you just did this, so I'm going to let you share. The question was, there's no middle decision tool link at the top like you showed. Can you tell people, because I know we just added it somewhere, the different places they could find the Moodle decision tool link within
Yeah.
Moodle?
So I'm assuming the person that sent this in, they were looking under the initial alternate LEA course where the decision-making tool wasn't there a second ago, but it is now there. So you would be able to find it under the initial summative LEA courses for alternate and also the test examiner course. And I can show that again. Arlene, would you like me to show that one more time?
Yeah, go for it. While you're pulling that up, Tyler, maybe you can do this for me. I was wrong, and I admit it fully. I said there is not a direct link to the Moodle Decision Tool earlier, and my friend Tyler corrected me. There is a direct link. Tyler, can you post that in the chat for people, for everyone, so they can see that? And then Jackie can show us where it is in Moodle.
Yeah, so under the initial alternate ELPAC LEA certification, if you select that, you will find it right here. And if we go back and we just select the same thing, but for the summative alternate ELPAC LEA certification, it is there again. And then one more time for the alternate ELPAC test examiner certification, it is also at the top.
Yeah, and it's in the chat as well. And we haven't put it on the CAASPP and ELPAC website quite yet, but we are gonna look into adding it there as well to make it even easier to find. Because I saw someone had asked about like what the purpose of that is, and it's just to help navigate, to the right course because there's a lot of stuff in Moodle available for folks. So it's just like an extra way to get exactly to the right course you're looking for. So we'll definitely look into adding that to a visible place on our website as well.
Thank you so much, Tyler. And yes, I appreciate you answering that question because I was going to jump in and say that. And I was going to say, if you already know all the things you need to do in Moodle, you don't need to use decision tool. All right. So, Jackie, can you answer that next question? Where can we find the codes for Moodle training, especially for the Summative Alternate certification?
Definitely. So the LEA LPAC coordinator should have received an email that was sent out on November 3rd regarding the summative alternate course. If you have not received that email, please email us at moodlesupport@scoe.net and we will get you the information you need to go and retrieve your enrollment keys for your LEA.
Thank you. All right. ETS, I think I've got some other questions for you. So for students taking the CAAs, is action needed to assign the alternate LPAC? Who wants to tackle that?
I can do that. If a student is set for any alternate assessment, then they are set for all alternate assessments across the board. So no additional action is needed. If they're set for one, they're set for all the others.
Okay. And then Tyler, I'm going to keep you there. Can you go over again that information that gets moved from SACE to TOMS?
Yes. So that's an optional connection. So if you have set up that integration between SACE and Tom's or some other SIS vendor and Tom's, test settings are the thing that get moved over to Tom's. Whenever a change is made in SACE to a future IEP in there, those changes will get sent to Tom's. And to reiterate, a test settings, they're also called accessibility resources, aka designated supports and accommodations. Those are what gets moved over with that.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm going to take it off of you. And Tracy, I'm going to take it back to you, or anyone from CD wants it. We've got a couple questions about domain exemptions. And I haven't been able to read them all the way through. There might actually be some repetition here. But Tracy, could you read that question and answer those for us?
So do the domain exemption forms and the alternate assessment decision tool need to be renewed yearly? Again, we've answered domain exemptions need to be reviewed annually. Again, this can be done through an addendum to the IEP. The alternate assessment decision-making worksheet could be reviewed by the IEP team, considers the assessment decision. Remember, if you have one alternate assessment, then they're all alternate assessments. So it's really important that you are ensuring that you are reviewing that participation worksheet that has been made available for districts to optionally review and determine if there's any new information on the student to maybe remove them from the alternate assessment and into the general. Again, you should be doing that during your IEP meetings and looking at what services that they are now being given.
All right. And do you feel like you covered that next one, or is the question about domain exemptions is one or two
Yes,
domains?
they're asking if it is only one or two domains a student could be exempted from. The answer is domain exemptions, again, are only for the summative ELPAC, and one domain in each composite may be exempted. So listening or speaking in the oral composite, reading or writing for the written composite. So you have to, at minimum, complete one of the domains within the oral and one of those domains within the composite in order to have a score produced.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and put in the chat the link to the domain exceptions for the alternate ELPAC. John, let's head back over to you. So we have a question about their general LEA ELPAC certification. So for the general summative ELPAC, does that cover the alternate or is it separate?
So it is a completely separate certification. And so yes, you're not covered if you've done the general LEA LPAC certification. You still need to take the alternate LPAC certification if you have eligible students who are registered. By the way, it's also a different form assignment, so be sure to check both form assignment sheets as well. You may be Form 1 in general LPAC and Form 2 in alternate LPAC.
Thanks, John. And oh, I was about to lose my place here. How about, may I wait until I know for sure if we receive a student before certifying for the initial and summative alternate?
Yes, you have that option. As soon as Tom's reports that you have a student registered for the summative alternate LPAC, SCOE will be alerted and we will notify your LEA that training needs to be completed within 2 weeks.
Okay. And one more. Does the LPAC alternate need to be administered by a certificated staff member, or could a classified staff member administer the alternate LPAC?
Well, that's a good question. The alternate LPAC does not require that the test examiner be certificated. It only recommends that the test examiner be someone very familiar with the student who works with them regularly and understands both their IEP and their communication modes.
All right. Tyler, I'm going to head back to you. What are the steps for uploading accommodations as a mass upload? And you probably are going to want to put something in the chat too.
Already done just this second. Yes, there is a video on how to upload settings one by one and how to do it in bulk. And then also on that page that I linked, the template file is also there. You can also get the template file from within Tom's itself, but it's also on our webpage there. And yeah, you just fill out that sheet and upload it. And yeah, it's worth mentioning that if you have an entry for a student that in an upload file, it will overwrite everything for that student that's in Tom's already. So generally, a lot of the times coordinators will have a master file going that they can add things onto or change so that you're not overriding any settings.
Tyler, what if I want to see last year's students who took the alternate LPAC? How can I find them in Tom's?
You know, I was looking into that. I know that there's probably a couple different reports in Tom's that you could pull. I am not sure what the best one is. I'm sure you could get that from the last year's data file, but there's probably a better one. I will look into that and let you know if I find the best one there.
Okay, thanks. And this is a good time to remind everyone that these answers are all going to be printed up nicely for you and posted in Moodle. So if you've missed any answer, or maybe you took a phone call while the question was being answered, we will have those for you in Moodle. So like this one, we'll get that answer and posted. I've got one more for you, Tyler. Who can contact the success agent? In our LEA, we've been told only the LEA coordinator can contact our success agent.
Yes, that is generally true that the LEA or district level coordinator should be the one contacting success agents. However, if a test examiner is in an active test session and they have a problem, like right there that needs to be solved immediately, they can actually call Caltech right then and there if they want, just to get some in-test session troubleshooting. But otherwise, yeah, you should be test examiners should be contacting their LEA coordinator, and the LEA coordinator can reach out to success agents.
Thank you, Tyler. Tracy, I'm going to ask you, you already talked about domain exemptions for the alt LPAC, but this question is being asked in a slightly different way, and I know you've got an answer for it. My understanding is that there are no domain exemptions for the alternate LPAC. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So when you are, next question. Okay, again, Tracy. So you're looking for our district status for possible second scoring being assigned, not finding my LEA's name. Does that mean we don't have to second score?
Correct.
Lucky you guys. Okay, and one more. Are there pause or exemption rules for the alternate test like there are for the general summative test?
No, there are no pause rules for the summative alternate LPAC. All tests expire at the end of the testing window. But please note, for the initial alternate LPAC, we do have a timeline of 30 days.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, I'm coming back to you. You've got a follow-up question to an earlier question. I'm an LEA coordinator and test examiner. I already certified for the Summative Alternate LPAC LEA certification. Am I good to go? Did we lose John?
Oh, are you talking to me? Sorry, I thought
I
you said you would
am.
come back. I thought you were
No,
talking to Tracy.
I went
Sorry.
too fast. So sorry.
I was sitting here typing. There's one confusing question, so I'm trying to go through it. So the I already certified for the Summative Alternate LPAC LEA certification? Am I good to go? Yes, the LEA coordinator certification course includes all of the test examiner training, so you need not take this test examiner training as it would be redundant.
Okay. Um, and then uh, next question. I know you want to address something. It's similar to a question that's been asked, but why don't you read the question and then answer it? Is it mandatory for all test administrators?
Yeah, is it mandatory for all test administrators to complete the alternate LPAC training along with the summative training? We currently do not have any students assigned for the alternate LPAC. So there's some terminology in here that makes me wonder what the question really is. So first I want to address the term test administrators. I think test administrators is a term used in some CAASPP assessments. Most relevant here would probably be the CAAs. For LPAC and alternate LPAC, we use LEA LPAC coordinators and test examiners. So I'm going to try and answer both these things. If you complete the coordinator training for the alternate LPAC, you do not need to take the test examiner training because that would be redundant. If you were to complete the CAA test administrator training, and you have eligible students for the alternate LPAC, you still need to take the alternate LPAC test examiner certification. They're not the same thing. So let me say that again. If you complete the CAA test administrator training, you still have to take the alternate LPAC test examiner training if you have students who are eligible. And if you have students who are eligible for the CAAs, you very well may have students eligible for the alternate LPAC. It just depends on whether they're English learners or not.
Thanks, John. And then can you again just clarify what the Moodle training is required for the initial alternate LPAC? Because the only course they see listed is the initial alternate LPAC LEA certifications. They want to make sure they're
Yeah.
not missing anything.
No, I appreciate that. And it's a little different, so it can be confusing. We're trying to make it we, as simple and limited as much as possible and still get everybody trained. So test examiners, for the most part, don't need to know any specific information for initial alternate LPAC. The administration of the assessment is the same, and so there's only one test examiner training for the alternate LPAC. That's why there's not a summative and an initial. It's just called the alternate LPAC test examiner certification course. There is an LEA requirement for training for both summative and for initial, but we chose to put most of the administration training into the summative course. And so the initial alternate LPAC LEA level, not test examiner, LEA level certification course still exists, and it's basically a supplement that gives you the information you need to administer prepare for and select students and register students and report on the initial alternate LPAC.
Thanks, John. I'm going to give you a break. And Tyler, I'm coming your way. There we have some new folks on, and one of them wants to know, are the LPAC alternate summative materials ordered through Tom's?
So the only materials that would be required for the summative alternate are if you wanted to print out DFAs, you can get the files in Tom's and print them out yourselves. And then picture cards would be the same thing. But if you wanted to have someone ship you printed picture cards, you can order those through the AST site, but not through Tom. So no, pretty much is the answer. You can download those things from Tom's, but if you were ordering picture cards, you'd get those through that AST site.
And there was the request for you to put links to all the things you've talked about in the
Oh
chat.
yeah.
And I think you've done that already. So thank you so much.
And I'll try
Okay,
to label those in the future. Yeah.
yes, thank you. Tracy, let's go back to you. Um, does the 1% threshold apply to the alternate LPAC? And if so, is that 1% of enrolled in students K-8, 1% of grades 3-8, etc.? How can you answer that question for us?
I'm not going to answer anything because it has nothing to do with the alternate LPAC. The 1% threshold is related to the CAA for ELA math and science assessments, and the decision to identify a student for alternate assessment is made by the IEP team. So every LEA is required to report their participation rate in advance of the actual assessment, and that information is publicly available. And there is a link that we put in there that we can add to the chat. And Terry, I'm not sure if you're on. I believe we're doing the final follow-ups with some of those districts who still haven't turned in their 1%, but it's due very soon, if I remember correctly.
That is indeed correct, Tracy. We were reviewing a list of LEAs today that had not reported on that, so letters will be going out soon.
And that was Terry talking, not me, even though it has my name on it. Trace, what about this next one? What score do students need to be released from continuing scoring? And if they are exempt from a section of testing or two at work for meeting the requirement to be released from testing?
Okay, so I think they are talking about if a student is reclassified, because the student needs to annually test until they are reclassified. So first of all, students are required to meet an overall level 4 on the summative LPAC or an overall level 3 on the summative alternate LPAC to meet the requirements of criterion 1 for reclassification. Then students must also meet criteria 2 through 4, and that is teacher evaluation, parent consultation, and a test of basic skills. Those requirements are mandated for a student to exit, but the measures are determined locally, and that is all of that information can be found on our reclassification page on the CDE's website. Now, if a student is exempt from a domain, the composite score is determined based on the completed domain score within that composite. And so even if they only complete 2 of the 4 domains, they will get an overall composite score for oral and for written, as long as they have completed listening or speaking, reading or writing. And then that can end up being a level 4 for a student based on how they performed on their completed domains.
Thanks, Tracy. And I'm going to give you one more, and this this question's been asked a couple different times. So it's there's a little bit of confusion over whether or not an alternate test examiner has to be certificated. So could you address that?
I'm going to actually ask Terry, but it's my understanding that the primary test administrator needs to be certificated, but the second scoring test administrator could be someone else who has been trained. But please confirm.
No, you're absolutely correct, Tracy. The primary test examiner does need to be credentialed. The secondary score, though, if the district is identified for secondary scoring, the TA and or aide for that program can perform the second scoring for those assessments.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you so much, Terry. I'm looking at our time, and I'm seeing we're just about up, and we have a couple more questions. And actually, John, I'm going to go back to you for one last, even though I told you that was our last one. That your very last question, clarifying something you said before about the CAA test administrator certification versus the test examiner role in the ELPAC? It's that last question in your column. Can you address that again for us, please?
So the question saying, getting confused here, is there a test administrator certification for any of the CAAs, or just test examiner role for the alternative ELPAC? Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a certification course for the CAAs, but they're not related to the alternate ELPAC.
Yes. Thank you. So there are some questions we haven't answered, but like I said before, we will answer them and we will get them in Moodle for you, probably within the next week and a half. And for now, I'm going to turn it back to you, John Moyer.
Okay, Jackie, if you could just go to the next slide. So we thank you for coming, and we just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions about Moodle, email us at moodlesupport@scoe.net. For questions about training and administration, you can email us at lpac@scoe.net. That's if you have any questions about what's being said in the training or understanding calibration or for general LPAC and that kind of thing. Go ahead and email us. And if you have alternate LPAC policy questions, you can email the CDE at lpac@cde.ca.gov. But we thank you for coming. We hope you learned something, and look for all the answers and these slides and everything to be posted on the alternate LPAC LEA certification course.
Thank you all very much.